Moving right along with the UFC's pay-per-view schedule is UFC 312 from beautiful Sydney, Australia. A rematch from a fight that took place last year in the middleweight division is Dricus Du Plessis taking on Sean Strickland, as well as a strawweight title bout between the champ Zhang Weili and Tatiana Suarez, finally finding herself in her first opportunity at a UFC championship. It has been a long time coming. Will she win? Well, that will come on later in the show, courtesy of my good partner, Ian Parker, who brought along the suit there for the UFC 312 pay-per-view show. I am not in the suit. Neither of us made the trip over to Sydney, but we have done our research. We are here to give you gambling advice for UFC 312. But before we do, we got to take a look back at the UFC's last card, last weekend in Saudi. How did we do at the window, Ian?
You know what, Brett? Let's call it what it is. This was not a good night. My premium play was the first time it fell, was Izzy. I thought he looked good in round one. Round two, got the lights shut out. My prop, McKinney was a coin flip. TKO or sub, he went with the TKO. My MVP play, I really love that play. That hit. Parker's parlay hit, but the rest of the best bets, including Said Nurmagomedov, fell. I got to get this back. I got to get the ball rolling here and get hot. No better way to start than with 312 in Australia. Let's go.
Yep, just saving that heat streak for the good people over the good fans over in Sydney, Australia, and this rematch in the main event. I mentioned the main event, mentioned the co-main event. Let's take a look at the rest of this card. You can find it on ESPN Plus, as always. Even though it's taking place on Sunday over there on the other side of the world, it is a normal time slot here in the States. Justin Tafa taking on Taliesin Teixeira. Jimmy Crute is back. Jake Matthews. So as always, a good representation of the continent of Australia. But we are we're focused, of course, first off on the main event. DDP versus Sean Strickland. No surprise here. DDP minus 225. A little bit surprised because the first fight was extremely close. So I guess I am a little surprised at how high this line. How did you feel about the opening of this line, and ultimately where are we going?
Kind of had a feeling this is where we were going to land, not just because of how the first fight was close, but because of the way that DDP put away Israel Adesanya in their last fight. That was before Izzy kind of, had a little bit of a downfall going into the Imavov fight. And Sean Strickland won a very, let's just call it what it is, a boring decision against Paulo Costa. So people are starting to, I think, really understand that DDP is a very strong competitor. He fights very awkward. He's good on the ground. He's very tough. Good hands, and it's hard to really find a reason why the same result wouldn't happen. Look, you're talking about someone Du Plessis who looks for the finish. Strickland, outside of the Abus Magomedov fight, kind of a decision machine here, very durable. But the elephant in the room, what was on Sean Strickland's arm, that staph infection. He could say that he doesn't get staph, but he gives staph. But in order to give staph, you have to have staph. So we know he has it, right? And when you have staph infection, look what happened to Benoit Saint-Denis and a lot of other fighters. You're on antibiotics, that stuff kills you. Your heart races, you get tired. And even though Strickland's a cardio machine, I do think that this is going to impact it to an extent. I do think that Du Plessis can push forward, will utilize the wrestling more. Now, minus 225, we're not going to take him on the money line. But, Brett, I'm going to go with my premium play here. With Du Plessis to win in over 2.5 rounds, I think he could pull the decision. I think that he will probably do it by stealing some rounds, by taking Strickland down and holding him there. And if he's going to get the sub, I think it wouldn't be later to rounds 4 or 5 anyway. So Du Plessis over 2.5 rounds. That's where we're going this week.
I'm glad you mentioned the possibility of staph, and I think it's okay for all of us to mention it because DDP, frankly, put it out there that he believes that Sean Strickland has staph. He mentioned it on social media. Sean Strickland was asked about it this week. How much of this play is based on the speculation that might be an issue for Sean Strickland? Because I got to admit, and Ian, if there's other reasons, please tell me. And you kind of got into it with your explanation, but I do see reasons why this fight would be close like it would last year. I mean, Sean Strickland looked really good in the beginning of this fight just 1 year ago. And yes, DDP has had a great performance against Israel Adesanya in the meantime, but Israel Adesanya, with all love and respect to him, is getting older, and now we're talking about potentially the end of this guy's career. So I just don't understand the minus 225. Explain it to me, and then also how much is the staph? How much of this play is based on that speculation?
So to answer the first question, I think really where the line just comes into play is based off of what they have done since. DDP got a finish over Izzy. Granted, I agree with everything you're saying about Adesanya at this point in his career. And Sean had a very less than desirable win over Paulo Costa, but that's how Sean fights. So and because DDP won their last fight. So it's hard to really picture, like, if I were to ask you, hey, if Strickland wins this, how does he do it? It would have to be, what, a 5-round kickboxing fight where he outpoints him? Can he do that against Du Plessis without being taken down, without being hit himself? That's where I think the line really makes sense with the number. I do think 225 is a little high. When this first came out or when the matchup was announced, I thought we were going to see a minus 185. But that's why I still like Du Plessis here, but I'm using the over 2.5 rounds to get that number to make it a little bit more bettable. I don't think Du Plessis is going to finish Sean inside of 2. And is the staph infection a mainstay for this? Listen, I like Du Plessis in the over 2.5 prior to the staph, but that staph is concerning and it gives me more conviction in my play.
Yep. It's an interesting one to talk about, especially because of the potential of staph there. And then you also look at the first fight and the fact that Sean has made such a big deal about getting the headbutt and the blood in the eyes, which I do think does have some potential for some realness to it. So it's a hard one to bet for it. I think you've done a good job of breaking it down from every angle, Ian. Let's move to the co-main event, 115 pounds, Zhang Weili taking on Tatiana Suarez. And this is somewhat surprising, but also not. Zhang Weili opening as a pretty clear favorite, minus 170. And then because of how everyone has held Tatiana Suarez in such a high regard, there she is. She is now sitting at a minus 120 favorite after opening plus 130. That is a big swing, I think, for a championship fight. But again, it just speaks to what everybody thinks about Tatiana Suarez and has thought about her for years. But she has not done it against Zhang Weili. She has done it against other former champions, has not done it against Zhang Weili. Where are we leaning here after the line movement?
Well, look, I loved when she was at plus 130 here. And a lot of people on Twitter are saying, what are we missing here? Why is Weili now the underdog? And I'm just going to put it out there to my reasoning, and I believe this is why. Zhang Weili has been taken down way too much by much lesser wrestlers. So it was Yan Xianan, Rose Namajunas. Her offensive wrestling has gotten better. We know her striking is good. But in that last fight against Yan Xianan, she was taken down way too many times for comfort. Going against someone in Tatiana Suarez who is wrestling heavy. She is... I'm going to say Khabib-like, not to that extent, right? But the pressure's there. When she's on top, you don't get back up. And she's putting together the submission skills. She trains with her fiance, Patchy Mix, who you've seen. Guy is phenomenal on the ground. Her striking has come a long way as well. So if she can use that striking just a little bit to set up the wrestling, I think Tatiana is going to steal rounds here very early. I think she's one of the few fighters in the division who can match Zhang Weili for her physicality, for her strength, where Zhang Weili has been able to bully people. She's not going to be able to bully Tatiana Suarez. In the clinch, Tatiana's going to press against the cage, hold her there, and I think it's also going to wear out Zhang Weili a little bit. As much as we've cashed on Weili a lot, I think she's been a great champion. I also don't like the fact that she's mentioned this is going to be potentially her last fight, win or lose in this weight class before she goes up. So I do think that for Tatiana Suarez, the wrestling is going to be a factor. I think she's that good, and I'm going to take her to get it done as a 3-unit play.
Yeah, well, obviously, Zhang Weili has been the woman to beat in this division for a long time, but a lot of people have looked at Tatiana Suarez as the clear-cut future of this division. We'll find out at UFC 312. And before we get to the rest of the main card, we are going to be offering a boosted parlay that is on ESPN BET. You can download that app, and you've seen this on the show over the last year. It is a way to take a parlay that Ian puts together and actually get even better odds on it. So what are we going with UFC 312?
Well, we're going to take my 5-unit play. We're going to do the Du Plessis to win over 2.5, and we're going to throw in Tatiana Suarez by submission. Starting at plus 620, if you boost it, plus 750. We've seen Suarez with that guillotine. We've seen it with the rear naked choke. If she gets this fight to the floor, which I think she will over time, that submission will be there for her.
That's so nice, man. Plus 620 all the way up to plus 750 if you go with the boosted parlay, only on the ESPN Bet app. Let's take a look at the rest of the main card. We took a look at it right off the top of the bat of the show. I mentioned, of course, as always, we got a big Australian presence on this UFC 312 card. Run us through the rest of your picks on your main card, starting with Talison Teixeira taking on Justin Tafa.
Look, Talison Teixeira looked, I'm going to say, okay until he got the knockout over Justin Tafa. However, Tafa is... Man, I don't want to say this to his face because he scares the heck out of me in real life, but he's a one-trick pony, right? He's a power puncher. He doesn't do well at defending kicks. He's got nothing if he gets taken down off his back. And on his feet, there's such a height difference here with the reach going into Teixeira's favor. I think he can get it done here. I like him at this number. We're going to go with the young gun over the old vet here.
Okay, taking the favorite there in Talison Teixeira. Moving on to the next fight. It's in the light heavyweight division. I mentioned Jimmy Crute back in action for Australia. You picked a Brazilian in the first one. You're picking a Brazilian again over there in Australia.
Yeah, look, Jimmy Crute is someone that we all thought was going to be a big-time prospect, right? Or a very solid prospect, to say the least. However, Does he have a path to victory here? We're going to assume that he can maybe submit this guy in Bellato, right? However, Cruz lost his last 4 or 5, with one of them being a no contest. He's fighting someone that if he doesn't get Bellato out in round 1, Bellato will come back and knock him out. So I'm going to take Bellato here. Younger. This guy's like a zombie. We've seen him be put in danger, come back and win. Cruz, I just can't imagine him being the same out this long with injuries. 4 out of 5 losing. I think Cruz done. I'm going with the younger guy in Bellato here.
Well, one thing I really like about this card is you see a lot of tight lines in the title fights on the rest of this main card. And rounding it out is Jake Matthews. He's got the last hope there for the Aussies. Are we picking Jake Matthews, Ian, or are we going with Francisco Prado?
So I'm going to go with Jake Matthews to win at over 1.5 rounds here. Look, Prado's a very tough, durable guy, but Matthews is a seasoned vet. I believe he's going to probably utilize his wrestling here, take him to the ground. I don't see him finishing Prado. However, to get that line down, I think this fight will go all 3. I think Matthews will win a decision here. So we're going to take that, play it for 1 unit. Matthews will represent the Aussies very well in this fight.
A lot of good information on this UFC 312 main card. You can tell that Ian is looking to get a hot streak together. He's got the suit on. Go ahead and run us through everything that we just spoke about, the best bets at UFC 312, how are we breaking down our units, and getting on our first hot streak of 2025.
Yeah, so Parker's premium play with the 5-unit play has been pretty solid this year, going 2-0, and then we missed it with Izzy. So we're going to start that off with with Du Plessis to win over 2.5 rounds. Then we're going to go to our 3-unit play with Tatiana Suarez. I think the wrestling is going to be too much for Zhang Wei Li. Wouldn't even be surprised if Suarez grabs a sub in rounds 2 or 3. Moving on, Taliesin Teixeira over Justin Tafa. I think the reach will be there. He can take this fight to the floor. He can submit Tafa if need be. I just think that reach is going to be the difference. Bellato, just watch out for Cruz wrestling and subs, and you get the win. Matthews in over 1.5. And look, if you put all these together, plus 15-1 on a parlay, why not? I need to get hot. I think it starts here with 312.
All right, so there you go. There's your breakdown of all the units on the UFC 312 best bets. But, of course, we got everything else for you on this card, starting with the long shot prop. It can be anywhere on the card. Where are we going for the long shot prop of the night?
All right, so we saw in her last fight, Kong Wang, she lost 2nd-round submission to a similar fighter in Gabriel Fernandez. She's now fighting Bruna Brazil, part of Team Fight Nerds, who does have a grappling go-to if she needs to. She could stand on the feet, use her reach here. If she takes this fight to the floor, she could absolutely sub Kong Wang. I think it's going to take a round or 2 to really wear out her opponent. Let's go round 2 sub. We're getting outrageous odds here. It is worth a flyer.
Yeah, certainly worth a flyer. I mean, that's a little bit of a lotto draw, but it is a nice 40-1 lotto draw there in the second round for our long shot prop of the night. How about our regular parlay, Parker's parlay? We already gave you the boosted one. Now we're giving you Parker's parlay for UFC 312.
Yeah, look, if you want Bruna Brazil by sub, it's plus 1,400 if you don't want to get crazy. But to Parker's parlay, we did hit this one last week. Give me Jack Jenkins and Santos over 2.5 rounds. And just for everyone's information, I think Jenkins is a live dog in that fight if you want to sprinkle something there. Give me Alexander Topuria, the brother of Ilya Topuria. We're hearing a lot of big things about him. I'm going to test him out in our parlay. Cody Steele and Keelan Salkild should run through his opponent. When I submitted that, Brett, he was minus 600. He's up to minus 800, plus 188. Let's go 2 in a row, or 2 back-to-back weeks of Parker's parlay.
So there you go. All of our best bets for this one came on the main card. Our Parker's parlay all taking place on the undercard. And how about a long shot parlay for UFC 312?
Yeah, you know what? Let's go 3 subs for a 36-1 payday. Tatiana Suarez by sub, Cody Steele by sub, and Keelan by sub. I think this one's actually more realistic than a long shot here, so I'm going to take a shot. Let's get it done. The submission parlay this week. Let's go.
All right, so a 36-1 on the long shot submission parlay, a 40-1 on a submission long shot prop, and we're not quite done yet. Parker's prop, last final order of business for UFC 312.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cody Steele here to win inside the distance and even money. I think he's a very special prospect. He goes for the finish here, fighting someone in Rongzhu who's susceptible to submissions. I think Cody Steele gets it done in even money. I'm going to take a shot here as well. Let's get Parker's prop of the night on this one.
Yep, it's a big weekend, not only for the UFC, but also just for sports in general. Of course, I'm talking about the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. So real quick, before we wrap up and say goodbye on this UFC 312 UFC Best Bets show, where are you going with your Super Bowl pick for 2025, Ian Parker?
Well, I have two rules. One, I'm a New York Giants fan, so I can never root for the Eagles, even though I have love for Saquon Barkley. But, dude, I don't bet against Patrick Mahomes ever. So I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs for the three-peat. I believe they're a dynasty. I'm rolling with Mahomes and the Chiefs. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chiefs as well. And you say that you never bet against Patty Mahomes, but I feel like a lot of people are. I feel like Philadelphia is kind of the darling. It's where everyone's going to be putting their money this year, and I tend to go in the opposite direction. Living in Vegas, I've learned that is the way to go. So I will be on the Chiefs. Feels like the Chiefs are always usually the public side. I feel like the Eagles are going to be the public side now. So I'm going to try to be smart and take the Chiefs. That means everybody should probably take the Eagles because I have a bad history when it comes to betting the Super Bowl. But we have a good history of betting the UFC right here on this show. Thank you so much to Ian Parker, myself, Brett Okamoto. Enjoy the fights. Normal time, ESPN Plus, UFC 312. We're going to have a lot to talk about post-show with the main and the co-main 2 title fights, and then we're right back here later this month. We got plenty of fight night cards to discuss going back to the Apex. So keep it tuned to the ESPN MMA YouTube page, the bet page. We will be talking Ian Parker's Twitter account. We'll be giving out gambling advice all the time about the UFC. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the fights.